Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students, in this lecture we will discuss the tumors of the nasopharynx. According to World Health Organization classification, the tumors of the nasopharynx may arise from the epithelium, soft tissue tumors, cartilage, bone, or the lymphoid tissues. So we can classify the tumors of the nasopharynx according to their tissue of origin. First, epithelial tumors. The epithelial tumors are further subdivided into benign and malignant ones. The benign tumors are papilloma, pleomorphic adenoma, oncocytoma, and ectopic pituitary adenoma. In malignant tumors, we have nasopharyngeal carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, papillary adenocarcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, mucoepidermoid carcinoma, adenoid cystic carcinoma, polymorphous low-grade adenocarcinoma. Soft tissue tumors. Again, they can be subdivided into benign and malignant tumors. Among the benign soft tissue tumors, we have angiofibroma, hemangioma, hemangiopericytoma, neurolemoma, neurofibroma, paraganglioma. In malignant tumors, we have fibrosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, angiosarcoma, Kaposi sarcoma, malignant hemangiopericytoma, and synovial sarcoma. Similarly, the tumors can arise from the bone and cartilage, and some tumors of the nasopharynx may arise from the lymphoid tissues of the nasopharynx. These malignant lymphomas are non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, extramedullary plasmacytoma, midline malignant reticulosis, histiocytic lymphoma, and Hodgkin's lymphoma. Previously, it was called Hodgkin's disease. There are certain miscellaneous tumors which can be subdivided into benign and malignant ones. Among these, benign are meningioma, craniopharyngioma, teratoma, and among the malignant ones, we have malignant melanoma, germ cell tumor, and chordoma. Although nasopharynx is a seat of primary tumors, but sometimes from other primaries, the tumors may have secondary tumors in the nasopharynx. Similarly, there are certain unclassified tumors, and similarly, there are certain tumor-like lesions, for example, cysts, meningocele, meningoencephalocele, granuloma, and amyloid deposits, which may make their appearance in the nasopharynx. And these can be classified according to the WHO classification. Now, first we will discuss the nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Nasopharyngeal angiofibroma is a benign, highly vascular, and locally aggressive tumor of the nasopharynx, which occurs exclusively in the prepubertal and adolescent males. It accounts for 0.05% of all head and neck neoplasms. This angiofibroma may also be named as juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma and nasopharyngeal fibroma. Angiofibroma, usually the age of onset is the second decade of life, that is the teen age of the patient. Normally, 7 to 19 years is the range of age. Mean age at presentation of the patient is around about 14 years. This tumor may regress in late teens, but it may persist into the adult life as well. But it is rare after 25 years of age. Site of origin of angiofibroma. The nasopharyngeal angiofibroma arises close proximity to the posterior attachment of the middle turbinate near the superior border of the sphenopalatine foramen. Perhaps from the non-chromaffin paraganglionic cells of the terminal branches of the maxillary artery. This figure shows the site of origin of juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma, that is close to the sphenopalatine foramen, posterior to the attachment of the middle turbinate. This is again another figure which is showing you the cartilage, the skeleton of the nasopharynx, showing the sphenopalatine foramen, which is the site of origin of the nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Theories of origin of angiofibroma. First, hormonal theory, because this tumor makes its appearance in the adolescent males. That's why it makes its appearance when the testosterone makes its appearance in the males. That's why it is said that it is hormone dependent. Second is the desmoplastic response of the nasopharyngeal periosteum or embryonic fibrocartilage between the basiocciput and the basisphenoid. The third theory of origin of angiofibroma is the hematomatous one. That is, it arises from the hematomatous tissue close to the sphenopalatine foramen under the influence of testosterone. Next theory is the theory of nest cells, which is undifferentiated epithelioid. The last one is the vestiges of the atrophied stapler artery, which may give rise to the angiofibroma. Hematoma. Hematoma is a benign focal malformation that resembles a neoplasm in the tissue of its origin. It is not a malignant tumor. It grows at the same rate as the surrounding tissues. It is composed of tissue elements normally found at that site, which are growing in a disorganized mass. And in this way, under the influence of testosterone, these disorganized mass will give rise to angiofibroma. Blood supply of the juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Usually it is supplied by the external carotid artery in majority of the tumors. The branches which supply the nasopharyngeal angiofibroma are internal maxillary artery, ascending pharyngeal artery, and palatine arteries. In very large tumors, less commonly, these tumors may be supplied by the internal carotid artery through sphenoidal branches and ophthalmic artery. Pathophysiology. The angiofibroma starts adjacent to the sphenopalatine foramen. Large tumors, they are bilobed or dumbbell shaped. One portion of the tumor fills the nasopharynx and the other portion extending to the pterygopalatine fossa. Spread of the angiofibroma from the site of origin. Anterior growth. The angiofibroma from its site of origin, it may grow towards the nasal cavity anteriorly. It fills the nasal cavity on one side And in this way, the septum is deviated to the other side. And through the nasal cavity, it may go towards the maxillary sinus through its ostium. Second is superior growth, superior spread. Superiorly, it may grow towards the sphenoid sinus, cavernous sinus, pituitary fossa, optic chiasma, and middle cranial fossa. Lateral spread. Laterally, it may involve the pterygopalatine fossa. Through the pterygomaxillary fissure, it may involve the infratemporal fossa and then to the cheek. Similarly, when it involves the greater wing of the sphenoid, it may go to involve the middle fossa dura. If it goes through the infraorbital fissure, it may involve the orbit, and in this way, it may cause proptosis and optic nerve atrophy. From the site of origin, the angiofibroma may grow posteriorly in the nasopharynx. Now, this figure is showing the direction of spread of to different directions to involve different structures of the base of the skull, nasal cavity, maxillary sinus, nasopharynx, and so on and so forth. Symptoms. In majority of the patients, it will cause nasal obstruction, around about 80 to 90%. This is the most frequent symptom. Along with nasal obstruction, it will cause epistaxis as well, 45 to 60% of the patients. This epistaxis in majority of the patients is unilateral and it is recurrent one. It is also painless, diffuse, and unprovoked. Headache. Headache is seen in 25% of the patients. This may be due to blocked paranasal sinuses due to the tumor itself, and sometimes it may be due to intracranial extension of the juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Facial swelling is seen in 10 to 18% of the patients. Other symptoms of angiofibroma are unilateral rhinorrhea, anosmia, hyposmia, rhinolarynglalgia, deafness, otalgia, swelling of the palate, deformity of the cheek. Signs which are seen by the examining surgeon are nasal obstruction, nasal mass or nasopharyngeal mass in around about 80% of the patients. Orbital mass is seen in 15% of the patients. Proptosis is seen in 10 to 15% of the patients. Cheek swelling and trismus is seen when there is infratemporal fossa involvement. Frog face deformity may be seen. Similarly, serous otitis media may be seen due to Eustachian tube blockage, and cranial nerve involvement may be found in these patients having juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. The cranial nerve which are involved are second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth cranial nerves. Characteristic presentation is teenage or young adult male patient with recurrent epistaxis, nasal mass, and nasal obstruction. And this figure is showing you the nasal mass in the nasal cavity. This figure is showing you the bulge in the palate. Investigations which are usually done in these patients having juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma are plain X-rays of the nose and paranasal sinuses. This will show you the haziness of the sinuses. Bone erosion may be seen due to pressure necrosis. Then contrast enhanced CT scan of the nose and paranasal sinuses. This will show extent and vascularity of the tumor. It may show Holman-Miller sign, which is the anterior bowing of the posterior wall of the maxillary antrum. It may show bone erosion, widening of the sphenopalatine foramen. This figure is showing you the X-rays of the skull and paranasal sinuses lateral view, showing the presence of soft tissue mass behind the maxillary sinus. And also you can see there is bowing, anterior bowing of the posterior wall of the maxillary sinus, which is known as antral sign or the Holman-Miller sign. This is the axial cut of the CT scan showing the soft tissue mass filling the nasal cavity as well as the space behind the maxillary sinus, that is the pterygopalatine fossa. And you can see the posterior wall of the maxillary sinus is pushed forward by the tumor which is present in the pterygopalatine fossa, which is the antral sign. This is again the Holman-Miller sign or the antral sign, which is seen in this photograph. This is the Honduza sign. Honduza sign is widening of the gap between the ramus of the mandible and the body of the maxilla. This is shown on the coronal cut of the CT scan. This is Ram-Haran sign. Ram-Haran sign is the quadrilateral appearance of the pterygoid wedge on coronal section of the CT scan. This is the chopstick sign, which is again seen on the coronal section of the CT scan. You can see the post-operative appearance of the medial and lateral pterygoid plates as two separate sticks due to drilling and removal of the pterygoid wedge. So this is again a sign, but this is seen in the post-operative period once the patient has been operated. Apart from CT scan, we can ask for magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. This will delineate and define the soft tissue extent in cases of intracranial involvement. Similarly, we can ask angiography, that is the digital subtraction angiography, which will show us extent, tumor blush, and feeding arteries. Similarly, tumor biopsy. This is contraindicated. Biopsy of the tumor in case of angiofibroma is contraindicated because the vessels which are present, they are thin-walled, they lack the elastic fibers, and there is absence of the smooth muscles of the blood vessels. That's why if we take biopsy from the tumor, there will be excessive bleeding. So due to bleeding, the biopsy from the angiofibroma is contraindicated. This is very important to note. This figure is showing you the hypertrophic maxillary artery, which is the major artery supplying the main bulk of the angiofibroma. This is pre-embolization angiogram showing you the internal maxillary artery with the tumor in the form of tumor blush. This is the post-embolization angiogram showing the vessel which has been embolized and there is absence of the tumor blush. Apart from these investigations, there are certain other investigations which are asked for in these patients having angiofibroma. For example, complete blood count, urine complete examination, ESR, bleeding and clotting profile. Similarly, ECG, X-ray chest, PAView, and blood group and cross matching is also done in these patients. Differential diagnosis. First, those causes of which cause nasal obstruction, they come in differential diagnosis. For example, enteroconal polyp, teratoma, encephalocele, dermoids, inverted papilloma, rhabdomyosarcoma, squamous cell carcinoma. Similarly, other causes of epistaxis, they should also be ruled out and they should be considered under differential diagnosis. So these causes which cause the epistaxis, these may be local causes and systemic causes which cause the epistaxis. Similarly, other causes of proptosis or orbital swellings which may cause, which may be considered in differential diagnosis. Treatment options. Number one is the surgery, which is the gold standard treatment for these tumors. Second is the radiotherapy. Radiotherapy is reserved for unresectable tumor, intracranial extension, and recurrent tumors. 3000 to 3500 centigrade in 15 to 18 fractions over 3 to 3.5 weeks period is performed. Proton stereotactic radiotherapy may be employed in juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is done in recurrent tumors with previous surgery and radiations. Similarly, hormone therapy may be employed. This is mainly employed to reduce the vascularity before surgery. Surgical approaches to remove the angiofibroma. Number one is the intranasal endoscopic approach. Second is the transpalatal approach. Third is the transmaxillary approach in the form of extended Danker's approach with facial degloving approach and extended lateral rhinotomy approach. Then fourth one is the infratemporal fossa approach, then anterior subcranial approach, and the last one is the image guided surgery for nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Now, a little bit about the preoperative reduction of tumor vascularity. This can be done by number one, embolization of the feeding arteries. This should be done 24 to 72 hours before surgical procedure. Gel foam or polyvinyl alcohol may be used. Blood loss can be reduced from 840 milliliter to 275 milliliter by performing selective embolization of the feeding arteries of the angiofibroma. Embolization means deliberate occlusion of a blood vessel to achieve a therapeutic result. Clinical applications of embolization. The embolization can be used in so many diverse clinical applications. For example, it can be used to treat tumors, to treat varicosities, vascular malformations, aneurysm and pseudoaneurysms, fibroids, and gastrointestinal bleeding. This embolization may involve permanent large vessel occlusions. It can be done with the help of coils, balloons, implants, vascular plug, guide wires, silk suture material. Permanent small vessel occlusions may be performed with particles, liquid sclerosing agents, liquid adhesives, ethiodol, thrombin, onyx. Temporary large vessel occlusions may be performed with gel foam sponge and autologous clots. Temporary small vessel occlusions may be performed with gel foam powder, starch microspheres, and fibrillated collagen. Autologous clots. The advantages of autologous clots are that it can be available immediately, cost is absent, and there is lack of adverse reaction. The method to obtain the autologous clot is that aspirate roughly 20 ml of patient's blood and then it is allowed to clot. Then discard the supernatant and reintroduce the clot through the catheter. If desired, the clot can be opacified by adding sterile tantalum powder. But there is a drawback because it that is the autologous clot, there is rapid lysis time in this case, which can lead to recanalization within 6 to 12 hours. Anyhow, this problem can be partially overcome by modification of the autologous clot. Gel foam embolization. Gel foam embolization provides a temporary occlusion lasting approximately 3 to 6 weeks. It can be used for embolization of pelvic trauma or postpartum hemorrhage, especially when there are multiple punctuate bleeding sites from various branches of the internal iliac artery. Mechanism of action of gel foam. The gel foam aggregates or it swells when on hydration into the larger particles, and it will cause mechanical obstruction of the vessel, and in this way there will be slowing of the blood flow and which will hasten the thrombus formation, and in this way the vascularity of the tumor is reduced. Gel foam advantage, as it is temporary in nature, so the advantages is that it can be used in hemoptysis and trauma. It is having low cost as well. The disadvantage is that it can cause infection due to trapped air bubbles. It can lead to ischemia due to small size, that is, its size is less than 70 micrometer. Polyvinyl alcohol particles. Polyvinyl alcohol particle is essentially a plastic sponge that is fermented and then filtered to a certain size range. Polyvinyl alcohol is available in sizes between 50 and 2000 micrometer. The typical size ranges used clinically are 300 to 500 micrometer or 500 to 700 micrometer. Mechanism of action of PVA. Polyvinyl alcohol particles are irregular in shape. They may be oval shaped, they may be oblong, irregular, and angulated. They promote aggregation. So when polyvinyl alcohol particles they are used, they will adhere to the they will adhere to the vessel wall. Then there will be stagnation of the blood flow. This will cause inflammatory reaction and focal angionecrosis. There will be vessel fibrosis, which will lead to permanent occlusion of the vessel. In this way, the vascularity of the tumor is reduced. Uses of PVA. It can be used in uterine fibroid embolization, either for preoperative devascularization or as a definite treatment. In ENT, it is mainly used in juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma embolization. Bronchial artery embolization, it may also be used in portal vein embolization. Disadvantage of the PVA is that it occludes the vessels from proximally due to irregular size. It can cause catheter occlusion, which can lead to non-targeted embolization when catheter is flushed. Smaller particles have a significant risk of tissue infarction due to their distal level of occlusion. Apart from embolization, there are other methods to reduce the tumor vascularity as well. For example, number one is the estrogen therapy. Diethyl estradiol 2.5 milligram per oral thrice a day for 3 to 6 weeks. It will cause cellular contraction, increase in collagen in fibroblasts, which will lead to decreased bleeding, and in this way, it will lead to reduce the size of the tumor. Similarly, testosterone receptor blocker may be used, for example, flutamide. Radiotherapy may be used to reduce the size of the tumor, and cryotherapy as well. Complications of preoperative embolization. These complications may be major complications or they may be minor complications. The major complications include acute pulmonary edema, common iliac artery thrombosis, necrosis of the upper pole of the tonsil, necrosis of the nasal vein. Minor complications in the form of sore throat, nausea, vomiting, fever, hematoma in the femoral region, reversible change in visual acuity, dyspnea, hemifacial paresthesia, tongue paresthesia, hemifacial pain, headache, neck pain, temporomandibular joint pain, periorbital pain, lower limb pain or soreness, and lip pain may occur in due to embolization. Selection of the surgical approach. One is the intranasal endoscopic approach. This approach may be used when the tumor is small in size and it is present in the nose, paranasal sinuses, or nasopharynx, pterygopalatine fossa, and even it sometimes may be used in large tumors. Second is the transpalatal approach, also called Wilson's approach. This is again used in small tumors which are present in the nasopharynx. Transpalatal plus sublabial approach, that is the Sardana's approach. It can be used when the tumor size is large and it is present in the nose, paranasal sinuses, or nasopharynx. Transmaxillary approach is used for tumors extending to the pterygopalatine fossa. Extended lateral rhinotomy, mid-facial degloving approach, Danker's approach may also be used in these tumors. Mid-facial degloving approach, all these four figures, they are showing this approach. Infratemporal fossa approach with or without craniotomy. For this approach is used for tumors extending to infratemporal fossa and having intracranial extension. Then is the anterior subcranial approach for intracranial extension tumors. Image-guided surgery may be employed in small and medium-sized tumors. Thank you so much.